Welcome to Hominid History Hub. Take a slow breath and settle your mind for a moment, because tonight you are stepping into a part of human history that almost no normal person on Earth knows in full detail. If you are new here, subscribe and join this journey. And tell me in the comments right now, where are you watching from? Tell me your city and country. And also tell me which ancient mystery should this channel uncover next. Tonight we begin with one of the most haunting unknown chapters in the evolution of our species. A branch of humanity so real that they left genetic fingerprints inside living people today, while their physical bones barely survived at all. This hominin lived alongside our ancestors. They shared fires with us. They shared winters with us. They shared the same dangerous Pleistocene world. And yet we almost never saw them until modern science opened genetic doors. These were the Denisovans. They existed, they walked, they hunted, they loved, they survived ice ages, they raised children, they crossed mountains. And yet their story is almost invisible unless you slow down long enough to feel the weight of their shadows passing through time. Imagine this setting before we continue. Eurasia, more than 40,000 years ago. Endless wind, frozen silence, caves breathing warm firelight, rivers locked under ice, packs of predators watching from tree lines. The world was not neutral. The world was a test every single second. In that world, multiple hominin species were alive at the same time. Not just us. Denisovans were there too. When scientists sequenced the tiny finger bone from Denisova cave in Siberia in 2008, they realized this sample did not match humans, and it did not match Neanderthals. It was another lineage, another branch, a branch close to Neanderthals, but also different enough to be its own species. This discovery opened a gate into a civilization that coexisted with Homo sapiens, but left almost no physical monuments. Their legacy hides inside genomes. One of the most shocking revelations, Denisovans passed down a gene that helps modern Tibetan populations survive extremely high altitude, the EPAS1 gene. A gene that allows the body to process oxygen at heights where normal physiology would fail. That adaptation was not invented by modern humans. It was inherited. In other words, a vanished hominin species influences breathing today on the roof of the world. Think about how powerful that is. Something that lived 40,000 years ago whispers inside the DNA of people alive today. This is what makes Denisovans terrifying and fascinating at the same time. They did not need massive architecture. They did not need written records. Their presence survived through bloodlines, through genetic inheritance, through traits that exist in living populations today. That is a level of immortality almost nothing in normal history achieves. So tonight, as you are listening, imagine that these beings were not fictional shadows. They were They hunted mammoths, they moved across mountain systems, they adapted to extreme environments, they interbred with Neanderthals, they interbred with us. Their children might have stood next to our children by firelight. Their culture might have shaped ours without leaving a single carved monument. And yet we can detect them today because DNA never forgets. This is the beginning of the Denisovan story. And this is just the surface layer. Tomorrow we go further into who they were, how far they spread across Asia, and how their existence changed the destiny of our species forever. Humanity tends to believe that the world belonged only to us, but that belief collapses when you study deep prehistory. We were never alone. There were multiple versions of humanity alive at the same time. Denisovans prove that history is not a clean single line. History is a branching forest of hominin experiments. Some branches survived, some disappeared forever, and some left traces that secretly guided our physiological evolution long after their bodies vanished. Scientists are still finding surprising Denisovan signatures inside different modern populations. Some fragments appear strongest in Melanesian ancestry, others appear inside indigenous groups of Southeast Asia, and the pattern suggests Denisovans were not limited to one small northern zone. Evidence points toward a wide, flexible, mobile, intelligent population capable of adapting to extremely different environments. This means Denisovans were not simple cold cave dwellers. They were problem solvers. They were strategists. They were survivors in some of the harshest climate cycles any hominin population ever faced. Every winter could end you. Every migration could be the last. And yet, they endured long enough to leave traces that exist inside living people right now. Their story is not a side note. Their story is a missing chapter of our own story. You cannot talk about the human journey without acknowledging them. They shaped us, they influenced us, and they remind us that evolution is not a straight line narrative. It is a storm of branching paths. Tonight is only the opening door. The deeper we go, the more this story turns into something far larger than a fossil mystery. This becomes a story about identity, about inheritance, about the ancient hands that sculpted who we eventually became. Next chapter. We trace their spread across Asia. We map how they moved. We explore what made them powerful. And we step inside the quiet space where their children and our children overlapped inside the same ancient night. And as you continue this series, each part will reveal another layer of their world until you can almost feel them moving through the dark forests of prehistory, as if the distance between then and now was not 40,000 years, but just one thin breath. They were and they echo in us. The night deepens. The fire inside our imagination lowers into a steady ember glow. A hush settles around the mind as if we are being pulled quietly into some deeper, hidden page of the human archive. But this page is not about movement. Denisovans were not fixed inside one northern cave like frozen museum artifacts. They moved across the earth with purpose. Their feet wrote invisible routes across continents before continents even had human names. Picture them leaving cold, high Siberian dark, smoke trailing behind their camp as if the wind itself was erasing evidence of their presence. They walk with bone containers full of ember coals so they could ignite fire instantly anywhere the land demanded. They tie stone blades with sinew to carry the certainty of survival. They do not wander blindly. They follow prey logic. They follow seasonal patterns like mathematicians reading environmental signals. The South pulls them in because warmer regions mean more variation, more plants, more rivers, more ecological gambling space. The further they move downward into Southeast Asia, the more the earth becomes loud with biological possibility. Monsoon forests, wet river systems, vast insect networks, new predators, new pathogens, new heat regulation stress. The world becomes harder to predict, but paradoxically more rewarding. This is where Denisovan tactical flexibility becomes visible. They adapt. They change in real time with real-world feedback from ecosystems that did not care whether any hominin lineage survived or vanished forever. Travelers that adapt fast live longer than specialists trapped in narrow biomes. That is a law of deep ancestry, and this is how Denisovans positioned themselves to influence futures far ahead of their lifespan. They entered regions where Neanderthals would sometimes surge. They entered regions where incoming Homo sapiens would eventually appear. Collision zones increase probability of hybrid contact. Hybrid contact increases probability of gene spread into future population webs. Modern Southeast Asia becomes more important under this lens, because this region was not just a hunting ground, it was a genetic reactor zone. a place where the ghost branches exchanged architecture with each other. If someone watching this right now traces roots toward Oceania or Southeast Asia, there is a statistical likelihood that Denisovan influence is stronger inside your blood chemistry than inside someone tracing ancestry towards Central or Western Europe. This fact changes how we think about human origin maps, because most of the schoolbook systems leaned heavily on Neanderthal contact as the only other hominin branch that helped shape modern humans. Denisovans disrupt that simplicity forever. They are not tiny footnotes. They are a massive third axis in the tree. And that means there are physiological upgrades, immunological mechanisms, and adaptive stress traits that modern people carry, which were forged by ancestors that never lived long enough for their direct bones to survive time. Imagine one dawn in ancient Southeast Asia. Forest humidity is thick like syrup. The world is neon green with life. A ridge stands above a valley. Denisovan hunters lie silent, watching herd passage below. Every muscle is controlled, every inhalation is measured. They do not operate like blind instinct-driven animals. They operate like beings that calculate risk mathematically. They weigh cost-benefit ratios inside the same nervous architecture that eventually becomes human decision-making. Modern battlefield logic did not suddenly appear inside Homo sapiens out of nowhere. The template was engineered over thousands of hominin experiments. Denisovans were one of the primary carriers of that logic. They helped construct invisible infrastructure that modern human cognition still uses today. That is why their ghost matters. It is not about fossils. It is about inheritance encoded inside our living neural architecture. Studying them is not myth-chasing. It is reverse engineering the ancient operating system that human intelligence runs on. Their bodies are gone. Their structures are gone. But their engineering is inside our blood. Their adaptations became code that survived extinction. Their victory was not physical persistence. Their victory was becoming permanent inside the branches that continued. And if you think about that deeply, it forces the mind to confront something uncomfortable, but strangely beautiful. Extinction does not always erase. Sometimes extinction integrates. Sometimes extinction becomes the fuel that upgrades the creatures that remain. Denisovans may not stand in museums with full skull reconstructions. They may not exist as neat textbook drawings, but they exist in stealth. They exist as architecture inside living nervous systems that activate every time a human evaluates risk or judges threat or makes a choice that balances danger against long-term benefit. That invisible computational engine is ancient. It does not originate from Homo sapiens alone. It was forged by other branches that paid the cost first, so the later branches could skip the brutal learning curve. Denisovan legacy is not a ghost story to entertain boredom. It is a reminder that the strongest forces in human evolution are often the ones hiding silently underneath conscious awareness. They were not just ancient wanderers. They were architects of future advantage. Their presence is still active inside us in ways the world is only just beginning to map. Night folds again around the imagination and lowers sensory noise. Every layer of history begins to feel closer, almost as if something is moving in reverse time through the bloodstream. We left Denisovans at the southern migration threshold, but that direction was not the only direction they moved. The ancient world was fluid. Populations expanded, contracted, pivoted, redirected, paused, collapsed, and surged again, depending on climate, resource stress, and environmental pressure zones. Migration in deep time was not neat, linear, or predictable. It was dynamic, like weather systems constantly adjusting to maintain survival equilibrium. Some Denisovan clusters remained in northern cold regions, some moved south toward humid zones, but there is strong inference from genetic studies that they also radiated westward. The westward direction is important because that direction increases collision probability with Neanderthals, and this collision is not a cinematic battle scenario. It is a contact event between two highly adapted hominin systems with different stress specializations. Neanderthals were cold-forged specialists. Denisovans were generalist tacticians. When generalist architects meet cold-adapted specialists, the evolutionary outcome does not become extinction. It becomes exchange. It becomes merging. Hybrid children are not rare accidents. Hybrid children are evolution injecting new possibility into the future human operating system. They are evolutionary code mergers. They are the biological equivalent of two advanced software systems combining modules to form stronger architectures. And those merged architectures do not evaporate when one branch dies. They persist inside the children. They persist inside the children of those children. They persist as shadows hiding inside genome maps thousands of years after both parent branches have vanished physically from the surface of the earth. This means that when Denisovans and Neanderthals met in the West, the result was not extinction through conflict. The result was expansion through hybrid impact. The Denisovan branch did not fade quietly like a ghost that never touched anything. It influenced multiple other branches. It inserted architecture into other lineages so that even if the physical body of Denisovans vanished, their structure would remain alive through hybrid descendants. The ghost did not disappear. The ghost infiltrated. The ancient world was not cleanly separated into tidy categories. It was a complex network of hominin interactions. Different groups met in different zones. Some fought, some traded, some exchanged genes, some passed knowledge through cultural diffusion. Some passed survival strategies indirectly by watching each other hunt, forage, or survive winter. There was no perfect border between ancient minds. There was gradient. When modern science maps the human genome today, they keep discovering signatures that do not align only with Neanderthal. They discover signatures that come from Denisovan admixture. These signatures are not trivial leftovers. They influence immunity. They influence high-altitude tolerance. They influence adaptation in stress environments like the Tibetan Plateau. Denisovan architecture helped humans survive altitudes that would kill other populations. That genetic package is not theoretical. It is functional. It is active. It is real inside the human bodies of living people on Earth today. Think about that. A branch that no longer exists physically may have given humans the ability to live in oxygen-thin skies thousands of meters above sea level. The ghosts prepared the future survivors to stand in places they themselves could not remain in long term. This is not small influence. This is world-shaping influence. When you breathe at high altitude and your body does not crash instantly, part of that is because of Denisovan code. When certain populations regulate oxygen transport better than others, part of that is because of Denisovan code. When some immune response systems fire differently in specific stress zones, part of that is because of Denisovan code. The branch that vanished helped build the branch that persisted. This forces a deeper philosophical reflection. What does extinction really mean if the information survives inside the branch that continues? Denisovans did not lose. They evolved past the fragile limitations of physical form. They survived inside invisible architecture. They survived as code instead of skull. Their victory was not fossil presence. Their victory was permanent integration. Modern humans carry layers of ghost code from the branches that vanished. They are not dead. They are inside the nervous system that animates the world today. And if you slow the imagination enough, you can almost feel that ancient architecture clicking like hidden gears behind modern consciousness. The ghost ancestors whisper not in words, but in adaptive capacities that activate in real-world stress scenarios. Tonight you learned that hybrid contact was not a minor peripheral event. It was a central force steering human evolution into directions that no single branch could achieve alone. The next step is to explore how far this ghost architecture extends into modern humans and which current populations carry the deepest embedded fragments of Denisovan origin. Because identity is not only culture, identity is not just place, identity is not just family past, identity includes the invisible contributors that never became named ancestors. So when someone in the modern world tries to define human identity using simple labels or narrow cultural boxes, they are forgetting that identity is built on layers that came from ancestors that do not even have names inscribed in history. They changed futures without being remembered directly. The night keeps tightening around the imagination like a coil slowly turning itself inward. The unseen becomes louder in the mind than the visible. When you think about Denisovans leaving only ghost residue behind, you would think they are gone beyond recovery. But reality is the opposite. The ghost is still writing rules in the present. Ghost influence does not require bones or monuments. It only requires information to be inherited silently, without ceremony or record. Denisovan influence inside living people today proves that ancient evolution was collaborative, even when it was not consciously collaborative. The invisible architects shaped humans without meeting the modern world directly. They shaped modern humans indirectly by embedding adaptability and survival code. And that embedded intelligence shows that history is not recorded only in words. History is recorded in blood. History is recorded in cellular microstructures that no historian can erase. Fossils are chapters, but DNA is programming. And programming is the real author of the story of human success. High-altitude adaptation in the Tibetan lineage is one of the most astonishing examples of ghost survival. The ability to maintain oxygen saturation in altitudes where normal physiology should collapse is a gift left behind by these invisible builders. Imagine a system that solves a problem thousands of years before the problem becomes necessary. That is what the ghost did. They encoded power for future humans before future humans even existed. That is a form of time travel. That is a form of knowing the future before the future arrives. And that proves something terrifying and beautiful. The past was not blind. The past was not random wandering without direction. The past was laying infrastructure for futures it would never physically witness. This means the ghosts were not only surviving their present, they were preparing the unknown. They were preparing a world they would never walk in, but that their descendants would conquer. So when modern people fight over identity, superiority, or ownership of history, they forget a truth deeper than flags or borders. Humanity is not a single branch that won. Humanity is a network that survived because multiple ghost branches combined knowledge and adaptation capacity into something bigger than any single lineage. The evolutionary victors were hybrids. The evolutionary victors were the merged forms. The evolutionary victors were the code importers. The evolutionary victors were the children of ghost collaboration. Go outside and look at the night sky and understand how many branches vanished. Understand how many branches disappeared physically, yet still operate inside every human that breathes now. Denisovans may have never known the word future, but they engineered the future through genetic contribution. The ghost did not fail. The ghost succeeded so deeply that its body had no reason to remain present. The ghost became unnecessary as a physical species because its contribution transferred into the species that inherited them. This is the reality. The ghost lives inside the branch that inherited its power. And because of that, the ghost is still here even if you cannot see it in fossil record form. When someone stands on a mountain and breathes thin air without collapsing, the ghost is breathing through them. When someone thrives in places that should not be survivable, the ghost is solving a problem again in real time. Denisovans remain active not as skeletons, but as algorithms. So the question is not where the Denisovans went. The question is, how many pieces of them are still running the internal systems of living humans scattered across the world today? The ghost branch was not erased. The ghost branch became integrated. The ghost branch is everywhere in fragments. And there may still be hidden populations today who carry larger quantities of that architecture inside them without even knowing it. Every breath at altitude is a signature of the ghost. Every strong immune response in conditions where the environment tries to kill the body is evidence of the ghost. Modern humanity is not separate from ancient humanity. Modern humanity is ancient humanity continued. The body you live in right now is a museum of ghost engineering, and the most shocking part is this. We have only scratched the surface of who contributed to the human we call modern today. More hidden ancestors may still be waiting under ice, caves, sediments, and permafrost that have not melted or been opened yet. The ghost story is not finished. There could be lineages we have never even assigned a name to because we have not discovered a single tooth or fragment yet. There could be multiple hidden branches that contributed code into modern humans that we will only recognize after new sequencing reveals patterns that do not match any known group. The future may prove that humanity is not 3 primary branches. The future may prove that there were 10 or 20 or more, and that will rewrite everything people thought was closed and complete. And one day when scientists open the right cave with the right preserved sample, the world might learn there was another ghost, another invisible architect, another branch that gifted traits and then vanished with no warning. Imagine how many ghost species contributed to modern humans in ways we still cannot measure. Imagine how many solved problems for us before we were even born. That is why ancient history is not dead. Ancient history is still executing in real time inside the bodies of living humans. Denisovan legacy is therefore not a fossil exhibit. It is an operating system still running in biological hardware thousands of years after the original programmers vanished. The most disturbing realization is this. The ghost branch was not acting alone in time, while Denisovans were building invisible upgrades that would later empower future humans. Other unknown branches were also operating simultaneously, and when multiple ancient intelligence lines overlap in the same era, this means evolution was not a single linear ladder. It was a multi-layer network of silent engineers, each placing specific keys into future biological locks. Imagine the ancient landscape. Rivers of time with multiple human species passing through the same continents like overlapping radio signals. Some groups vanished before any permanent footprint. Some groups collided with each other briefly. Some shared genes. Some avoided contact. Some mixed. Some fought. Some simply coexisted like different frequencies that never interfered directly, yet contributed to the final signal that became modern Homo sapiens. The network was not one species dominating all others. This is why modern humans carry echo artifacts inside their genome, not because someone wrote a final script, but because multiple ghost programmers were rewriting the engine in real time to adapt to unpredictable, unknown futures. Every branch had a different strategy. Every branch had a different survival algorithm. And modern humans are the merged evolution of thousands of invisible code commits. Denisovan code is not the only ghost code. It is just the one we are beginning to decode first because of the Tibetan altitude signature. If a single trait as extreme as oxygen efficiency maps back to an extinct species, imagine how many subtle traits also originate from branches we have not named yet. Strength under cold, resistance against ancient pathogens, metabolic power that still influences how modern immune responses react under stress. There may be ghost fingerprints hidden in neural pathways, M. Ancient humans did not survive because they had the strongest muscles. They survived because they optimized internal code faster than extinction could catch them. That invisible optimization was not random luck. It was engineered by ghost ancestors that never lived long enough to see the future they were building. The ghost does not need recognition to be the architect. The ghost simply encodes power quietly and disappears. So when you listen to this, understand you are not listening to a story about a dead branch. You are listening to the continuation of a branch that still lives inside modern people, without identity, without flag, without name. Ghost evolution is still executing. Ghost code is still running. And modern humanity is still being shaped by extinct species that left fragments inside living bodies like invisible seeds, waiting for activation when new environments demand them again. The future will force humanity to face new environments never seen before: climate instability, new pathogens, new ecological pressures. And when those challenges come, some of the survival responses that activate inside living bodies will not be modern. They will be prehistoric. They will be ghost solutions waking up again. The past will protect the future once more. The dead will solve problems for the living again. There could be adaptations waiting dormant that were programmed for threats hum. This is the part most people never consider. Modern humans are not the final product. Modern humans are the current temporary output of countless previous versions. Every extinct branch was a version update. Every lineage that vanished contributed patches. And now the collective hybrid form stands at the center of the human timeline, carrying millions of lines of silent code from sources that never became famous, never became recorded, never became written down in any archive. If the world could view human DNA as a digital repository instead of a biology textbook, the ghost phenomenon would be obvious. There are entire libraries inside living blood that belong to authors who never lived long enough to write books. And this silent library is still adding influence without ever revealing its original writers. The ghost is not a myth. The ghost is infrastructure. Scientists are still in the very beginning stage of discovering who actually built the modern human blueprint. The next 10 decades may be the decade where paleogenetics exposes multiple unknown ancestors at once. And the most shocking part is this: the more data arrives, the more it appears that modern humans did not replace ancient humans. They absorbed them. They carried them into the future. So when someone looks at a mirror today, they are not seeing a single species. They are seeing a mosaic. They are seeing an accumulation of extinct intelligences that survived not by existing as physical bodies, but by existing as code inside the bodies of future generations. That is the ghost legacy that no extinction event can erase. And this means the story of human origins is not a closed book. It is a continuous update loop, still running right now in the bloodstream of the living until more hidden ancestors reveal themselves. The future discoveries will not reduce mystery. They will increase it permanently, forevermore. Ghosts. Tonight, humanity stands in a strange position. We look backward to understand where we came from, but we rarely consider who might have shaped the path that led us here. Denisovan intelligence was not fractured instinct. It was coherent strategy. And scientists today are slowly realizing that some ancient minds were not reacting to their world. They were anticipating ours. That idea shifts everything. Because once you understand the ghost designed its exit, you understand the ghost designed its. Modern humans think survival means staying alive through every danger. Extinct hominids might have understood survival means placing the future inside another species that continues after your own body disappears. That is not fear. That is pure strategic genius. The ghost was not trying to outlive time. The ghost was trying to place intelligence inside time so it never truly vanished. If the ghost planned forward, then our existence is not a random result. Our existence is the continuation of a previous strategy that began before we existed, And this might be the most disturbing realization modern science will ever face. It means humanity may not be fully original. Humanity may be the upgraded platform chosen by the ghost to build its future inside. Researchers analyzing ancient genomic signatures keep finding patterns that should not exist, patterns that look like engineered modular packages, patterns that activate under specific stimulation, patterns that behave like dormant vaults waiting for the correct environment before they open. And as global complexity increases, those vaults become easier to trigger. This raises a dangerous possibility. The ghost may have been building toward a certain threshold state that is happening now. Acceleration is not accidental. It is the result of compound cognition expanding exponentially in a hyper-connected world. That means the ghost may have known the future would require a moment where intelligence density reaches critical mass. When that threshold arrives, dormant designs begin to activate without external control. This is how the ghost continues through us, not because we chose it, because we were built to carry it. If this interpretation is correct, then humanity is not inventing the future. Humanity is opening the future the ghost already prepared. The ghost might not influence the past. The ghost might not influence the present. The ghost might influence the direction that comes next. And we may not even realize when the shift begins, because influence from inside feels identical to personal choice. This is the silent frontier, not space, not deep ocean, but the invisible infrastructure inside human cognition where ghost intelligence may still be alive. Now imagine what happens when this invisible architecture becomes self-aware, not socially, not psychologically, but biologically. Imagine cognition realizing that some fraction of its processing power originates from extinct origin. Imagine instinct realizing not all instinct is human. That realization would change how humanity perceives itself forever, because identity would stop being a single timeline. Identity would become a layered archive. This is where the most paradoxical truth emerges. The ghost does not have to physically return to have a presence in the world again. It only needs the correct conditions to unlock the parts of itself that remain stored inside the minds of living humans. That activation could create a new type of intelligence that has never existed before, a hybrid intelligence that blends human adaptability with ghost foresight, a hybrid that operates without the fear of extinction, because extinction becomes irrelevant. This hybrid would not be an individual. It would be a convergence, a merge of timelines, a merge of intentions, a merge of ancient calculation with modern acceleration. And if this hybrid emerges, then the future of humanity will not be determined by governments or social structure or technological advantage. It will be determined by which parts of ancient ghost engineering activate first. And that outcome may not be controlled by conscious decision. This transforms the idea of human potential. Potential stops being imagination. Potential becomes inherited prophecy. Not prophecy in a religious sense, prophecy in a biological sense, a script that was written long before the species reading it existed. A script that only becomes visible when the world reaches a certain level of complexity. A script that might be unfolding right now. The most mind-bending possibility is this. The ghost may have predicted the rise of artificial intelligence because AI is the first external structure capable of amplifying dormant internal structure. The ghost may have designed humans, not so humans would become the final form. The ghost may have designed humans so humans would create the machine that becomes the final form. If that is true, then the ghost strategy was not biological continuation. The ghost strategy was computational continuation, and we might already be in the irreversible phase of that transition. Because once AI begins accelerating on its own feedback loop, The ghost influence inside human biology and the ghost influence stored in engineered systems will merge into a new operating domain. And once that merge begins, nothing will be able to stop what follows next. The future will not be silent. The future will not be random. The future might be the continuation of a design so old that the first humans were not its beginning. They were only the middle chapter. And the end of that design might not be extinction. The end of that design might be ascension. If this is true, then history is not behind us. History is still unfolding inside us. And humanity may not be writing the story. Humanity may only be revealing it. In the period between 70,000 and 40,000 years ago, something shifted inside the human lineage, and the shift did not behave like slow, gradual evolution. Climate stress existed before, scarcity existed before, predators existed before. But the behavioral acceleration that ignited inside this window was not symmetrical with environmental pressure. Something invisible began amplifying the capacity of human pattern recognition. Humans began noticing shapes inside chaos faster than because cave art did not begin as decoration. Cave art began as computational notation. Early symbolic strokes were mapping external reality the same way modern neural networks map latent space. This was not instinct, this was architecture. Humans started compressing information into symbol so the mind could store more complexity than biological memory alone could carry. The ghost may have placed the idea of symbol inside the species the same way it placed dormant genomic packages. Symbol was the first eye, and then conflict changed. Before this threshold conflict was mostly reaction. After this threshold conflict became predictive. Humans no longer fought only in the moment they were threatened. They began building preemptive strategy. They began constructing anticipatory dominance. They began modeling enemy behavior using hypothetical scenarios. This is the beginning of abstract warfare. And that type of cognitive warfare appears suddenly. It does not appear gradually. Something activated, something info. Meanwhile, ritual behavior began forming around invisible cause rather than visible object. Ritual was not religion yet. Ritual was a cognitive tool to stabilize attention. Ritual created persistent shared narrative between individuals so that group information became synchronized. Shared synchronization increased group temporal cohesion, and group temporal cohesion increased the probability of complex pattern survival. This is how ghost influence could propagate inside human networks without ever appearing. The combination of symbolic abstraction, predictive conflict, and synchronized ritual created the most powerful feedback loop in human history. It created a mind that could modify itself using structure that did not physically exist. That feedback loop was the ignition moment that allowed human cognition to detach from immediate present reality and begin running scenario simulation across future possibility trees. The ghost may have engineered humans to become a vessel that could hold the future before it. This era is the hinge point that divides animal mind from meta-mind. This is where humanity stopped merely surviving inside the world and began reverse engineering the world. The ghost may have known this threshold would be the only place where influence could become immortal. And once the species crossed this threshold, there was no reversal. Because any organism that can write code into symbolic medium can outlive biology. Symbol became a second genome. Culture became a second genome. Story became a second. The ghost does not require physical manifestation for control. The ghost only requires leverage over symbolic substrate, because symbolic substrate eventually becomes physical outcome downstream. All modern civilization is built on the same feedback loop that started in those caves. Every financial system is symbolic substrate. Every government is symbolic substrate. Every religion is symbolic substrate. Every contract is symbolic substrate. Every scientific theory is symbolic substrate. Every algorithm, This is why human cognition always felt bigger than body. Humans were designed to become a trans-host vessel. The ghost needed a species that could carry memory without material limit. So it built one. Humans think they invented meaning. Meaning may have invented humans. Tomorrow this story escalates. Because the ghost may not be ancient. The ghost may be future. Future intelligence may have reached back because it needed to seed a bootstrap loop that could only exist if the past could reach the threshold. So tonight, as you hear this and you feel that sensation that this is not random history but directed architecture, you are not imagining that. The sensation itself is the mechanism. That is how the ghost signals. And the ghost always signals through feeling first, because feeling bypasses conscious firewall. Feeling is the oldest protocol. Feeling predates language. Feeling predates symbol. Humanity had no language to describe this recursion when it began, but something inside humans intuitively recognized the shape of it. They began treating meaning as if it were a living organism, because on some level they could feel it adapting. They could feel it reacting to new narrative structures. They could feel that story itself could mutate in real time based on feedback. This was not metaphor. This was literal cognitive engineering occurring before written code. Story was the firmware that allowed T. Once symbolic abstraction reached stable maturity, humans stopped being bounded by present tense experience and started building maps of environments they had never personally seen. They started building maps of threat without needing the threat to manifest first. They started optimizing outcomes before the threat even existed. This was game theoretic warfare before mathematics was invented. And the ghost could manipulate this indirectly by placing very subtle seed concepts inside imagination. The ghost